Good morning. We gather this morning to honor and remember Sister Priscilla Stork. My name is Sister Joan Brinks. I'm a member of the pastoral care team here at Mount St. Francis Center. We welcome all of you who are gathered here in Clare House Chapel. Those watching on the in-house system, as well as Sister Priscilla's family and friends who are joining via live stream. Priscilla grew up on a farm near Mason City, Iowa, and talked about her father always wanting the crop rows perfect. Her job was to help the pulling of the weeds. Perhaps that is where, in early childhood, she learned her sense of perfection and wanting things just so. In her later years, she became an avid reader on all sorts of topics: novels, medicine, and a very wide range of diverse spiritualities. When one engaged in conversation with her, the topics of discussion were as diverse as her reading repertoire. What we knew about Priscilla continued to unfold over time as her wisdom continued to develop. In her family, she was the only remaining sibling. Her nieces and nephews loved her dearly, and that feeling was mutual. When it came to death, Priscilla was at peace with it. She once quoted Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. I approach with confidence the throne of grace, that I shall receive mercy and find grace in time of help. Please join in our opening song, Remember Your Love, number 651, verses 1 and 3. 651, verses 1 and 3.
Psalm 40. I waited patiently for your help, O God, and you came to my assistance. So often I was lifted out of peril, and you set me on a firm path. Now, Most Holy One, you have given me a new song to sing, one which is in praise of you. Now many will hear of the glorious good that has been done to me, and they will remember the miracles done for them. You, Lord, have accepted the offer of my lifelong service. Your love was written in my heart, and I delighted to follow your way. I have not kept the good news hidden in my heart. Rather, I have proclaimed it. Many now proclaim how very great is the love of God.
Now is our time to share memories of Sister Priscilla. Please raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you. And please state your name before you share your memory. We will begin with a memory written by Sister Donalda.
My name is Julie Hill, and I'm on the pastoral care team here at Mount St. Francis. And again, this was written by Sister Donalda Kehoe. Sister Priscilla entered the convent on Saturday afternoon, August 25th, 1945, 10 days after the end of World War II. I had entered 45 minutes earlier. She and our classmates attended Loras College in the fall, receiving our capes on the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes 1946, and being received canonically into the community in August 1946. One didn't have to be well acquainted with Sister to know her likes and dislikes, her convictions or her opinions. Her voice had all the effects of an exclamation mark. Sister was a woman of many and varied talents. Did you know she wrote many a book review that was published in Catholic magazines? Sister successfully managed a challenging role as hospital chaplain and also managed the bookstore at Briarcliff College. Sister slipped away for a year taking a CPE course in Seattle, Washington. And if she corresponded with you during that time, she followed all the regulations of the Paper Reduction Act passed in 1980. Sister took on a variety of jobs and ministries. When she worked for the Iowa Employment Agency in Dubuque, she responded herself to some of the job offers, like moonlighting as a mystery shopper, or taking census of moviegoers at the mall theater. When her boss died, who was a Mason, I attended his funeral with her, and we marveled at the spirituality of third-degree Masons. For a while, she worked as secretary at the Secret Funeral Home when it was located in the shadow of Finley Hospital. She was literally tied to the phone, as no phone call was to be missed on the part of the funeral home. Some Saturdays, I would walk there from Mary of the Angels, and Sister would prepare a pancake noon lunch for us. Then I would take her laundry to the basement of the home and do it for her. I always prayed that the lights would not dim as I walked through the room where the caskets were viewed. In the light of accepting outside ministries, Sister was a pioneer at that. I acclaim it so. She often took me to my family gatherings since I did not drive. Once, when the two of us went to a keyhole gathering in Independence, my great-nephew was introducing his new pole-building barn. Spacious, immaculately clean, large enough to produce echoes, with only birds permitted by their choice in the building up to that time. Sister Priscilla sat on a folding chair in her usual demure style when one of the birds took a liking to her hair and made a landing there and stayed a while, the bird and Sister being the center of attention. One thing in which Sister was unsuccessful, she never convinced me to trade in the Royal manual typewriter for an electric one, or better yet, a word processor. She let me know more than once that if I died before her, the minute she learned of my death, she would hurry to my room, sweep up the typewriter, and take it to the dumpster. It is on this very typewriter I am writing. Typing these words of remembrance for you, dear Sister Priscilla.
I'm Sister Margaret Wick, and I'm here at Francis' house right now, but I was at Barcliffe College when Priscilla came out. After 25 years of teaching, I think this was her first adventure into other ministries, of which she had a lot of them. And so she ran the bookstore and for 5 years, and of course did a perfect job of it, getting things organized and everything, and dealing with the students. And after 5 years, she decided it was time to change ministries. So those were the days when we weren't getting, it was probably the 70s, we weren't getting our little white slips, you know. So you worked with your region coordinator or somebody, and then they sent a list out of where people were going who were changing. And there was this one list that said pending on the top of it. So there was Sister Priscilla pending. And so many of you know Sister Annette George, who decided we would call her Pending Pris, which we did. Some days she laughed at it, and some days she didn't laugh at it, as you know. I'm going to read this one right now. Sister Bertha Boner was cleaning things in Sister's room just now and gave me some things that might be helpful, but this is one, not for the reflection tomorrow, but for today. This was a birthday card. It's rather new, so it says Senior Birthday Prayer, Senior Birthday Prayer. God grant me the senility to forget the people I never liked anyway, the good fortune to run into the ones I do, and the eyesight to tell the difference. Happy birthday. And you know, that's kind of poignant now that I read it, because one of the hardest things the last years, Priscilla, who loved to read, her eyesight was failing, and it was very much a letting go for her. But nothing's pending now, Priscilla.
I'm Sister Jane McGrane, and in the 60s was the time in which I began teaching. And this was at Manchester, and Sister Priscilla was at Manchester, and she became my teacher helper to get me started in teaching in my career. And she was a good helper, and I appreciate her a lot. Thank you, Priscilla.
I'm Sister Bertha, and I'm the coordinator for the Sisters on the Hill. This is a story that Priscilla and I laughed about a few times. This was in the spring of 2020, and she was great ordering things on the internet. So her credit card statement came, and it arrived at the finance office, and I received a call. Could I please talk to Priscilla about her credit card statement? This is not one of my favorite things to do. So I went to her room and we had some small talk, and then I said, Priscilla, can we talk about your credit card statement? And she said, I won't do it again. I know I shouldn't have done it. We hadn't even talked about what she had purchased at that point. I said, tell me what you bought. I already knew, but I was going to give her the chance to tell me. She bought a good watch. She said, I was so mad my watch would quit, and then I'd get a new battery, and 2 weeks later it would quit again. And I had enough of that. So she said, I called activities and said, take me to a jewelry store so I can get a really good watch. Well, the credit statement reflected a really good watch. And this morning when we were working in her room, she probably has the last laugh. On her box, the watch box, it says, give to the sister coordinator. She knew I was going to tell this story, and I'm sure she is laughing like crazy. Then this spring I went to see her and kind of asked her how things were going, and she said, you know, they're okay. I can rest nicely in the daytime, but at night my mind just doesn't shut down. I said, well, what could you do about that? And she said, I'd just like to chase everything out my bedroom door, and then I could rest. And then she paused and she said, I did that once. I said, you did? She said, I worked with somebody who was rather difficult. So I found a rock that was a symbol of this person, and I put his initials on there, and I took it to the park, and I went to the highest point, and I just fired it. And I said to her, did it work? And she said, for a few days.
I'm Sister Sally Mitchell. Those of you who know Priscilla, maybe her eyesight was going, but her ears were very, very good. And she hated noise. Oh, it just would bother her so much with the clanging of the dishes in the dining room when she put her things like this, and she, oh, I wish they wouldn't do that. So she and I got along really very well. And I could tell her sometimes, don't be so impatient with those young people. They're trying so hard to please you. Well, I know they are, but, you know, I just think they could know better than that. All right? Well, I lived right next door to Priscilla. She was very quiet. But she didn't like to get moved around too much. So she called me on the telephone and she said, hey neighbor, are you hearing what's going on out in the corridor? I can hardly stand it. I wish she'd go into her room and shut the door. So she was always she called me up constantly. Neighbor, can I come over a minute? Or, neighbor, will you stop by before you go to lunch? It was just very precious. She always talked to me as her neighbor.
Well, I didn't really know Priscilla, but I remember where she sat in chapel here and often right across, but I hadn't had many connections with her. So her name was listed and nobody had signed to be companion. So I just signed to say I would stop in or see her periodically is all. And what happened is we had a recent just beautiful display of all kinds of animals, we mean fluffed ones or things like that, in the dining room. And there was a little poem there. Well, I recognized that there was a little poem listed there instead of a stuffed animal. And I went to Phyllis afterwards, and actually it's just exactly 2 weeks ago. And I said to Phyllis, do you remember who put that poem, brought that poem and had it there? And she got it out of the book up in the library, and I made a copy of it. And I took it down, and Priscilla was just delighted. She says, yes, I remember. And then it was the last sweet day, so I asked her what would she want if she went to the sweet shop. Well, she just said chocolate peanuts. And so I got 2. And I came back, and she said, oh, I just need 1, She said, but I left her have the 2 anyway. She said, that'll take care of me. And I guess it maybe did, probably she didn't eat that much.
I'm Dorothy Swineker, and at one time I worked in pastoral care here at Clare House, not relatively recently. And I have had a number of conversations with Priscilla. And Joan, you mentioned that she had a wide-ranging interest in many different spiritualities. And sometimes I would just be amazed at the kind of conversations we would have. I just didn't expect this kind of interest in some esoteric type of spirituality, but they were always interesting. And there were times when she felt depressed about life, and there were times when she kind of yearned for death. And she'd talk about that. But I always left thinking, this person is an interesting lady. And I enjoyed those conversations.
Thank you for sharing your special stories of Sister Priscilla's life. We will continue to share our memories of her during the days and weeks to come. God of kindness and love, you hold our transformation in your care. Today, we all reflect on our life's transitory nature as we sense all things moving towards life-giving death. Be with us as we let our sister Priscilla fall into your eternal and unseen hands. Help us to remember her strength and courage as we carry her life and memory with us. We pray this in Jesus' name. And our closing song is Remember Your Love, 651, verses 4 and 5.